You're listening to Psych to Parent, where we turn brain science into tiny wins at home. I'm Dr. Amy, your not-so-typical school psychologist, mom of two, and endurance athlete. I love a good data set and a diagnostic manual. But I also forget permission slips, overthink IEP emails, and occasionally replay the moment I snapped at my kids in the car. In other words, I'm in the messy middle with you, not above it. This show is for parents of big feeling, big thinking kids who are tired of vague advice and Pinterest perfect behavior charts. Each episode, I'll pull back the curtain on what I see in real evaluations, school meetings, my private practice, and my own kitchen, and translate the research into simple scripts, tiny routines, and nervous system friendly tweaks you can actually use. Think of it as a nervous system rehab meets mindset coaching meets a smart, slightly spicy, non-judgy friend in your earbuds. We'll take one real life challenge at a time and shrink it down into 1 or 2 tiny wins you can start this week. No perfection, no 47-step sticker systems, just small, repeatable shifts that add up over time. Quick legal-ish note in plain English. This podcast is for education and support. It's not therapy, it does not create a clinical relationship, and it's not a substitute for personalized medical or mental health advice. If you're worried about your child's safety or mental health, or your own, please reach out to a trusted professional. Okay, deep breath, drop your shoulders. You're not behind and you're not alone. Let's get psyched to parent. Okay, picture this. You're standing in a classroom that smells like freshly sharpened pencils, bulletin board paper, and mild chaos. There are name tags on the desks. There are supply bins. There's probably a tiny chair that looks like it was designed for a very responsible raccoon. Your child is either clinging to your leg or sprinting toward the classroom library, pretending they don't know you, or acting completely fine while your nervous system is quietly opening an invisible file folder labeled "Everything this teacher needs to know so this year does not go sideways." And there you are, holding a bag of supplies, maybe balancing a sibling, maybe trying to remember whether you already filled out the transportation form, and your brain is doing this very charming thing where it starts preparing for every possible school-related disaster. Like, great, we are not just meeting the teacher. Apparently, we are mentally climbing Mount Everest with a backpack full of glue sticks, worst-case scenarios, and one warm water bottle from the car. And the teacher is smiling. She's lovely, she's welcoming, she's also trying to meet 23 other families in 30 minutes. And your brain has 2 options. Option 1, say everything right now, quickly, before she turns to the next family, like you have verbal diarrhea. Option 2, say nothing, be normal, because you don't want to be labeled that parent, smile, mention nothing, and spiral later when you get home. And this, my friend, is why we're talking today about how to do meet the teacher, or that early email check-in, or that first parent-teacher conference without the panic dump. Because your kid's teacher does not need the whole novel in the first 3 minutes, but they do need a map. So let's take the pressure down a notch, put down the imaginary emergency binder, and talk about what we're actually doing in this episode. Welcome back to Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy, school psychologist, parent coach, and mom of 2. I'm a former teacher and parent of 2 real human children who don't always behave like they have read my professional credentials. Like, seriously, I've written a dissertation and a thesis, and I've done this for 20 years. How do you not know this, kids? And in this episode, we're talking about school conversations. Now, this might be meet the teacher night. It might be the first parent-teacher conference. It might be the early check-in email you send a few weeks into the school year when something feels a little off. It might be the moment you realize, okay, I need this teacher to know something about my child, but I don't want to send a 900-word email that begins with, "Sorry, this is so long." This episode is especially for the parent whose kid seems fine at school but melts down at home. The child who holds it together all day and then unravels over homework. The child who looks polite and compliant at school, but saves the tears for bedtime. The child who does not raise their hand, does not make a scene, doesn't interrupt the class, but is carrying a lot under the surface. By the end of this episode, you'll know what to share with the teacher, what to save for later, and how to use what I'm calling the sticky note method so your anxiety has a container. Not a binder, not a dissertation, not a legal brief written from your notes app at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. A sticky note. Because sometimes the most supportive thing we can do for ourselves before school conversation is make a plan small enough that our nervous system can actually use it. And before we go into the tool, I want to tell you why this one is so personal for me too. I want to normalize something right away in this episode. Even as a school psychologist, even as a former teacher, even as someone who has sat on the school side of the table for years, I still get nervous walking into parent-teacher conferences for my own kids. Friends, I know the system, the language, I know what teachers are juggling, I know the acronyms, I know those tiny chairs. I used to have them in my classroom. And still, my mom brain can walk into a school conversation and just start scanning. I think about, are they judging me? Are they seeing something I missed? Are they afraid to tell me something? Are they about to say something is wrong with my kid? Did I miss a sign? Am I going to be caught off guard? And then my nervous system does this very helpful, very dramatic thing where it walks into the room with a clipboard full of catastrophes. Like, okay, Amy, let's prepare for every possible scenario when you talk to the teacher. Let's rehearse the conversation. Let's have 6 questions all ready to go. Let's read the teacher's facial expression like we're decoding a hostage note. Let's mentally prepare for a problem that may or may not exist. So when parents tell me they feel nervous before a school conversation, I get it because I've been there too. And I think sometimes we make this too simple. We say, just advocate or just talk to the teacher or just ask your questions. But for a lot of parents, it doesn't feel like just anything. It feels tender. Because when you walk into a school conversation, you're not just talking about reading levels, math facts, transitions, or recess. You are talking about your kid. And that touches a very deep part of us. So if you get activated before meet the teacher or before the first conference or before sending that early check-in email to the teacher, that doesn't mean you're being ridiculous. It does not mean you are too much, and it doesn't mean you are bad at this. It means your protective system is online. And sometimes when that protective system is driving, we over-prepare. We over-explain. We ask all the questions. We try to make sure we will not be surprised. That's not a character flaw. That is anxiety trying to keep you from being caught off guard. Because here's the thing. When anxiety is holding the microphone, we can accidentally bring too much information in too fast. Not because this information doesn't matter, but because it doesn't have a container yet. That's where the panic dump comes from. And that's where the sticky note method helps. The goal is not to walk into the school conversations with no anxiety. The goal is to stop letting anxiety be the one holding the microphone. So before we talk about what goes on that sticky note, let's do the nerdy part and talk about why these moments feel so loaded in the first place. Here's the thing. Your parent nervous system is in the room too. Back to school is a transition, and transitions make nervous systems scan for safety. Your child's nervous system may be asking, will I know where to go? Will the teacher like me? Will I have friends? What if the work is too hard? What if I mess up? What if I can't hold it together? Your nervous system as a parent may be asking, will this teacher see my kid? Will they judge me? Will they notice something I missed? Will my kid be okay? Will this be another year where I have to fight for everything? Will I know what to say? And the teacher's nervous system is also doing a lot too. Your kid's teacher, here's what they're doing. They are learning names, greeting families, managing supplies, answering questions, tracking who rides the bus, who gets picked up, who needs medication forms, who has allergies, who has a complicated schedule, and who is currently using glue stick like it's chapstick. Everyone is carrying a lot. So when we bring the whole novel into a moment that can only hold a few sentences, the load goes up for everyone, kids, parents, and teachers. This is why I want us to think about school conversations as regulation moments, not just information sharing moments. Because your body comes to the conference too. Your anxiety comes to the email too. Your fear of being judged comes to the tiny chair too. So the goal is not to pretend you are perfectly calm. The goal is to give your nervous system a plan. A nervous system under pressure does not need more information. It needs the right information in a usable form. That is what the sticky note method does. Okay, let's stay nerdy for just like one more minute. But I promise we're not turning this into some sort of journal club where everyone needs a highlighter and a Coke Zero. The research word under a lot of this is co regulation. And co regulation is not just everybody needs to calm down, it's a warm, responsive support that helps guide a child's emotions, behavior, and thinking when something is hard. One recent paper describes co regulation as warm, receptive, supportive interaction where the adult helps guide and modulate the child's emotions, behaviors, and thoughts. And I love that for this episode because the teacher map is really a co regulation tool. It helps adults notice, oh, this kid may look fine, but when she rushes, guesses, erases, or says, I'm fine, that may actually be the stress signal. The other piece is that parent regulation matters too. Research on parent self regulation reminds us that our own emotional, cognitive, and body based regulation shapes how we respond in stressful parenting moments. So, the sticky note is not just a communication tool, it's a parent regulation tool. It gives your anxiety a job. It says, thank you for trying to protect me. We are not bringing the whole emergency binder with us. We're bringing 4 questions. And one more nerdy layer, because I can't help myself when I do these deep dives into the research and literature. I just like to give you guys the quick snippets because I don't think you guys want to read the studies like I do. I'd rather just give you the highlights. Lord knows my social media is not my highlight reel. It's real life, unfiltered, and really unedited. But anyway, in a 2024 systematic review on co-regulation between parents and elementary school-age kids, they found that behavioral and emotional co-regulation during challenge is positively associated with better child self-regulation. That matters because school-age kids still need adult support when things are hard. Not because they're babies, not because they are incapable, but because regulation is built in relationships, in practice, and in real life challenge. So when we give a teacher a map, we're not saying, please bubble wrap my kid. We are saying, here is where support helps this kid access the skills they are still building. Okay, let's take this from research brain into real life brain because nobody needs a dissertation next to the cubbies. The first thing I want you to remember is this. Meet the Teacher is the trailer, not the documentary. It's not the whole film. It's not where we explain every plot point, every character arc, every previous school wound, every assessment question, every homework battle, every bedtime fear, every meltdown that happened in the pantry because the granola bar was wrong. No. Meet the Teacher is the trailer. It gives the teacher the most important preview. And this matters because Meet the Teacher is usually not built for depth. It is crowded, it is quick, it is noisy. There are other families waiting. Your kid may be pulling on your arm. The teacher may be trying to remember 27 names and where the hand sanitizer went. So the goal is not to say everything. The goal is to open the door. A good trailer might include one warm hello, 1 or 2 of your kid's strengths, 1 stress signal, 1 support that helps, and 1 request for a check-in. That's it. Not because your kid is simple, not because your concerns are small, but because the teacher can actually use that. Here's the phrase I want living rent-free in your brain. The teacher needs a map, not the whole novel. And listen, I say that as someone who can write the whole novel. I love detail. I love a note. I love a framework. I love statistics and data. I love context. I love knowing the pattern. But in those first school conversations, more is not always better. Clearer is better. Usable is better. A map helps the teacher know where to look. A novel may make everyone need a snack and a Coke Zero. So let's talk about the map because this is where we take all that parent love and worry and turn it into something the teacher can actually hold. The teacher map can be very simple, friends. Here are the pieces. There's 5 of them. 1, where my child shines. 2, what stress may look like. 3, what helps. 4, one thing I'd love you to know. And 5, when we can check back in. That's the map, not the whole story, not the full list of every what if scenario, not this 19 paragraph email that starts with, I promise, not a 19 paragraph email that starts with, I promise I'm not usually this intense. A map, like for example, you could say something like this. I made this up. Liam is really curious and loves science. When he is stressed, he may get quiet and look like he is fine, but we often see the crash at home later. What helps is a little preview before transitions and a quiet nudge if he seems stuck. Could we check in after the first couple of weeks once you've had time to get to know him? Do you hear how different that is from a panic? Do you hear how different that is from panic dumping? It's clear, it's warm, it assumes partnership between you and the teacher, and it gives the teacher something to notice. Here's another version you could use. Maya loves stories and is really thoughtful. One thing we've learned is that when work feels hard, she may not ask for help. She might rush, guess, or say she's fine even when she is stuck. A private check-in helps more than a public reminder. Could we keep an eye on that together? Again, this is not a warning label, it's a map. And this is where I want to be really clear. You're not handing the teacher a problem. You are helping the teacher read your child more accurately, especially if your child's stress signals are quiet, especially if they mask, especially if they are polite and compliant at school and then your house gets the emotional aftershock at 4:30. A map says, here's what my child may not show you loudly. Here's what helps before the crash gets big. Here's how we can support them from both sides. That is advocacy without the alarm siren. Most teachers are not trying to miss your kid. They are trying to learn a whole room of children at once. And friends, that's hard. I've been a teacher. I've been a classroom teacher, a special education teacher, a learning support specialist. And we want to know our children that we serve. It is a privilege to serve. It is a privilege to teach. I loved being a teacher. I still love working with children. I love doing it in my private practice. But I want to learn everybody and I want to learn as much information as possible and as quickly as possible. But sometimes, even as someone who's been a teacher, I can be overwhelmed with how much information comes at me at once. So here's where I think you handing over the map is so helpful. So this is where you handing over the map is so helpful because it helps the teacher see the quieter signals sooner. And now I want to give you the tool I actually use for myself because knowing all of this in theory is great. But my nervous system still likes a plan. When I know a school conversation might activate me, I use what I think of as the sticky note method. And truly, I mean sticky note energy, not binder energy, not cross-examination energy, not I have prepared 43 tabs and a color-coded appendix energy. A sticky note, like literally the size of your palm or even smaller. Because for me, when anxiety shows up, my instinct is to overprepare. I want to ask a lot of questions. I want to explain too much. I want to make sure I don't miss something important. I want to avoid being caught off guard. And that makes sense. But now, instead of letting the anxiety run the meeting like it's training for an ultra marathon on pure vibes and sour Skittles, I give it a job. The job is the sticky note. Here are the 4 questions. What do I want to ask the teacher? What am I seeing at home that may be useful to share? What themes is the teacher seeing at school? How can I support my child from both sides? All right, let's talk about those in a little bit more detail. Question number 1, what do I want to ask the teacher? Maybe you want to ask, how is my child handling transitions? Are they asking for help when they need it? How are they doing socially? Are they rushing, shutting down, or avoiding anything? Question number 2, what am I seeing at home that may be useful to share? This is where you bring the pattern, not the novel. You could say something like this. We're seeing homework tears after long school days. We're hearing about bedtime worries. They seem fine after pickup, but then they melt down once homework starts. Maybe it's your kid saying they don't know what to do, but they also don't want us to email you as the teacher. Question number 3 is, what themes is the teacher seeing at school? Now, this is important because we are not just reporting from home. We are getting curious about the school side too. You might ask, are you seeing anything similar at school, even in a smaller way? Do they seem tired, quiet, rushed, or stuck during certain tasks? Are there certain times of day that seem harder? Question number 4 is, how can we support my child from both sides? This is a partnership question, not what are you going to do about it? Not what are you going to do about it? Not here is everything I demand, but how can we support this child from both sides? Maybe that means a quiet check-in. Maybe it means clarifying homework directions. Maybe it means a check-in after 2 weeks. Maybe it means you try a routine at home and the teacher watches for patterns at school. Now, the sticky note is not there to make you perfect. It is there to keep your anxiety from driving the whole conversation. It gives your anxiety a job. And I'll be honest, at my most recent parent teacher conference, I'm pretty sure I caught the teacher a little off guard because I came with my little note and started writing things down. But it helped me. It helped me stay grounded. It helped me remember that I did not have to ask every question that ever crossed my mind while driving, showering, loading the dishwasher, or panic scrolling on the parent portal. I had my sticky note. And sometimes, friends, that's enough. Now let's bring this into a real kid example because this is where the teacher map becomes especially powerful. Let's talk about the quiet, perfectionistic kid. I've seen a lot of those recently in my practice where it's more like these kids who put all this pressure on themselves and it's not coming from parents or school. It's just they are internalizing this pressure. This is a kid who is very easy to miss at school because she is not disruptive. She's quiet, polite, compliant. She may look like she's doing just fine. She's not flipping tables or shouting, "I refuse to do this." She's not making the classroom orbit around her feelings. She may even be the kid other adults describe as easy, but stress can show up in quieter ways. Maybe she rushes or guesses. Maybe she erases the same answer 6 times. She stares at the page. She says things like, "I'm almost done," when she barely started. Maybe she writes anything just to be finished. She doesn't raise her hand because asking for help feels embarrassing. Maybe she says, "I'm fine," because saying, "I'm stuck and I don't want anyone to know," feels too vulnerable. Maybe she says, "I'm fine," because if she were to say, "I'm stuck and I don't want anyone to know," feels too vulnerable for her. And then later at home, the same assignments turn into tears, stomach aches, bedtime worry, or a homework meltdown that feels like it came out of nowhere. But it didn't come out of nowhere. It came from somewhere. It just didn't make a lot of noise at school. This is why the teacher map matters, because the map is not, "My child falls apart at home, please fix it." The map is, "Here are the subtle signs that stress may be showing up at school before the crash lands at home." A teacher map version might sound like this. At school, she may appear cooperative, but when work feels hard, she tends to get very quiet, rush through it, avoid asking for help, or say she is fine even when she is stuck. A quiet check-in helps, especially a specific question like, "Show me the part where your brain got stuck," instead of, "Do you need help?" At home, we may see the stress later as homework tears, stomach aches, or bedtime worries. That is usable, friends. This gives the teacher something observable. Quiet, rushed work, erasing, guessing. When she says, "I'm fine," not asking for help, falling apart later. This is such an important reframe. Not all school stress is loud. Sometimes it looks like quiet compliance. And for our big feeling, high achieving, perfectionistic, anxious, ADHD-ish, gifted, twice exceptional, or deeply sensitive kids, that quiet stress can be very expensive. They may spend all day looking okay, then come home with nothing left in the tank. And that brings us right into the big feeling kid reframe, because the behavior at home is often telling us about the load from the day. When your child melts down after school, refuses homework, gets stomach aches, or saves all the worry for bedtime, the behavior may be saying, "I looked fine because I was trying very hard. I don't want to be a problem at school. I was stuck, but I didn't know how to ask for help. I held it together until I got home. I need the adults to notice my quiet signals. I do better when people know what helps. I need a bridge between home and school." Friends, this is why teacher communication matters. Not because we want to expose our child, not because we want to slap a warning label on them, not because we want the teacher to treat them like they're fragile, but because we want the adults around them to understand the map. We are not saying, "Here is everything that's wrong with my kid." We are saying, "Here is how stress may show up. Here's what helps. Here's what we're seeing at home. What are you seeing at school?" That is a very different energy. And I want to name something here too. Sometimes parents are afraid that sharing this information will make the teacher see their kid differently. And maybe they will. But hopefully they will see your child more accurately, not as lazy or careless or dramatic, not as fine because they are quiet, but as a kid who may need support before the stress gets loud. The goal is not to make the teacher worried. The goal is to help the teacher notice. And this is where I want to tuck in the school psychologist lens, because there is a difference between telling the teacher everything and giving the teacher the few clues that actually help. Here's my school psych lens. Early in the year, teachers are trying to learn who each kid is, how they communicate, how they handle transitions, how they respond to challenge, how they ask for help, how they show stress, how they connect with their peers, how they recover when something gets hard. And no, they don't need every detail on day one. They need the most useful clues. A strong teacher map includes strengths. What lights your kid up? Where do they shine? Stress signals. What does stress look like for your kid, especially if it doesn't look like big behavior? Supports that help. What helps them start, recover, ask for help, transition, or stay engaged? Supports that backfire. What tends to make things worse? A communication plan. When and how should you check in? Here are some examples of stress signals teachers can actually use. My child's stress often looks like quiet compliance. My child may not ask for help, but you might see them freeze. My child can look silly when they're anxious. My child rushes when they feel unsure. My child melts down at home after days that seem fine on the surface. My child gets very literal when they feel overwhelmed. My child might say, "I don't care," when they actually feel embarrassed. This is the kind of information that helps. Not because the teacher is going to solve everything immediately, not because school support is magic, but because adults can respond better when they know what they're looking for. And that connects back to co-regulation. Kids build regulation through repeated experiences of being supported through challenge. Now, we are not taking that research and saying your teacher must become your kid's therapist. No, that's not the assignment. We are saying that children, especially school-age children, are still building regulation, often need adults to scaffold the tricky moments with them. And if your child's tricky moments are quiet, the teacher may need a map, a quiet check-in, a private cue, a smaller first step, a transition preview, a question that makes it safer to ask for help. Friends, that is not coddling, that is scaffolding. Good teachers, safe, loving adults, scaffold for children. And speaking of school language, let's translate one of the phrases that can make parents spiral. Today's school phrase is "let's wait and see." Now, depending on your nervous system, that phrase can land a few different ways. It might sound like "we're not concerned," or "we are brushing you off," or "come back when it's worse," or "your home data doesn't count." But let's translate it. Sometimes "let's wait and see" means I need time to observe your child in this setting. And that can be reasonable. A teacher may not know yet whether a child will struggle with transitions, peer dynamics, homework, attention, or asking for help in the classroom. But wait and see does not mean wait and spiral. It can become watch with a plan. So you might say this: "That makes sense. I know you're still getting to know everyone. Could I send a short note with what we've noticed at home and then check back in around week 3 once you've had time to observe?" That keeps the door open. It respects the teacher's need to observe, and it protects you from silently spiraling in the parking lot while living off of vibes and sour Skittles, wondering whether you should have said more. Here's a key translation. Wait and see can become watch with a plan. Now let's give you the actual words, because nobody needs to improvise advocacy while their nervous system is doing burpees. Here are some parenting scripts that you can borrow from me. Script number 1 for a quick meet the teacher version. You can say this: "I know you're meeting a lot of families, so I'll keep this brief. Child's name is really, say, strength and a strength. One thing we're watching is that they can look fine at school and then melt down at home. Stress may look like blank signal. What usually helps is blank support. Could we check in after the first couple of weeks?" Friends, that's it. That's all you need to say. Script number 2, if you want to send an early check-in email. "Hi, teacher. I wanted to share something we're noticing at home in case it helps as you're getting to know my child. They may look fine during the day, but after school we're seeing blank home pattern. We're wondering whether there are any smaller signs at school, like rushing, shutting down, avoiding help, or seeming tired after transitions. We'd love to keep an eye on it together. Script number 3 for the quiet perfectionistic kid. You could say something like this. At school, she may appear cooperative, but when work feels hard, she tends to get quiet, rush, guess, or say she's fine even when she's stuck. A private check-in helps, especially something specific like, show me the part where your brain got stuck, instead of saying something more general like, do you need help? Script number 4, when the teacher says, let's wait and see, you can say this. That makes sense. I know you're still getting to know everyone. Could I send a short note with what we've noticed at home and then check back in around week blank once you've had time to observe? Script number 5, this is something you can say to your kid. I'm not telling your teacher every private thing. I'm sharing the things that help adults support you better. Script number 6, here's what you can say to yourself, my friends. You can say this. I do not need to say everything today. I need to say the most useful thing early. And that last one is for us, for the parent nervous system, because you don't have to walk into the school conversation like you are summiting a mountain with no snacks, no map, and one lukewarm drink rolling around in the cup holder. You can have a plan. You can bring your sticky note. You can ask the useful questions. You can be warm and prepared. Okay, let's make this very doable, because we're not leaving here with a 17-step school communication protocol. We're leaving with tiny wins. Here are a few tiny wins for this week. Remember, these are optional experiments, not homework for your worthiness, not another mountain to climb. Remember, pick one is enough. Tiny win number 1, make a 4-bullet teacher map. Write 4 bullets. 1, my child shines when. 2, stress may look like. 3, what helps is. 4, one thing I'd love you to know is blank. That's it. That is enough to start. Tiny win number 2, try the sticky note method. Before meet the teacher, a conference, or an early check-in email, write this. 1, what do I want to ask? 2, what am I seeing at home? 3, what themes might the teacher be seeing at school? And 4, how can we support my child from both sides? Tiny sticky note, not a dissertation, friends. Tiny win number 3, choose one say now and one save for later. Say now, 1 strength, 1 stress signal, 1 support, 1 check-in request. Save for later, the full history, the whole previous school year, the giant worry spiral, the detailed diagnostic questions. Those things may matter. They just may need a different container. Tiny win number 4, add 1 micro connection. Start with warmth before the ask. You could say something like this. I'm really looking forward to working together this year. Or, thank you for taking the time to get to know all of these kids. Warmth is not a weakness. It sets the tone. Tiny win number 5, take the parking lot pause. Before you walk in, send the email or open the parent portal while guzzling a Coke Zero, like me, in your car. Take 30 seconds and ask, what is the most useful thing to share first? Not the scariest thing, not the longest thing, not the thing my anxiety is waving around with a tiny flag. The most useful thing. Again, remember, pick one is enough. All right, before we go, a few tiny favors. First, leave a review for the podcast wherever you like to listen. It helps other parents find the show, especially the parents who are sitting in the car after pickup thinking, why is my kid fine for everyone else and falling apart for me? Second, share this episode with a friend who is already mentally rehearsing what to say at Meet the Teacher, the first conference, or in that early check-in email. And third, grab the Tiny Wins playbook. It's linked in the show notes. This is exactly the kind of moment where we don't need a perfect plan. We just need 1 tiny next step. A sticky note, a teacher map, 1 strength, 1 stress signal, 1 support, 1 check-in request. Finally, friends, come find me on Instagram at Psych2Parent, where we are building a community of parents raising school-age kids in kindergarten through 8th grade who want to feel a little less alone and want actionable tips and strategies that you can use immediately without feeling like you need to listen to another TED Talk, because nobody's got time for that. Let's land this plane, or honestly, let's descend this mountain carefully, because nobody needs a parenting summit without snacks. So if you're standing in that bright classroom with the supply bag in one hand, your child orbiting somewhere near the cubbies, and a whole invisible file folder of worries in your brain, I want you to remember this, my friend. Meet the Teacher is the trailer, not the documentary. Whether it is Meet the Teacher, the first conference, or that early check-in email you send, you don't have to say everything in the first 3 minutes. You just need to get the teacher a usable map. This does not mean your concerns are too much. It means they deserve a container where they can actually be heard. Start with one strength, one stress signal, one support, and one check-in request. Bring the sticky note. Ask about the quiet signs, like rushing, guessing, shutting down, or saying, "I'm fine," when your child is actually stuck. You can be warm and prepared. You can start with partnership and still advocate early. And the next time you sit at that tiny round table in that tiny chair, remember, schools have expertise, and you are the expert on your child. Your insight is not extra, it's essential. You're not behind, you're building a partnership, and you're building skills, yours and theirs, one small, doable step at a time. Until next time, my friends. Thank you for hanging out with me on Psych to Parent. I'm Dr. Amy, your not so typical school psychologist, and I'm genuinely glad you're here doing this work instead of quietly white knuckling it and blaming yourself. Your tiny win from today's episode is simple. Do not overhaul your entire parenting style. Pick one idea, one sentence, or one tiny shift and try it in a low stakes moment this week. Then notice what changes, even if it is just by 1%. If you want more support, head over to psych2parent.com. You'll find show notes, simple scripts, and parent-friendly guides that go with these episodes. While you're there, make sure you join the Tiny Wins mailing list so you get weekly brain-based tips, real-life examples from my work with families, and first dibs on new workshops and resources. It's the easiest way for us to stay connected beyond the podcast. If this podcast was helpful, it really does matter when you tap follow or subscribe. Leave a quick review or text it to a friend who is parenting a big-feeling, big-hearted kid too. This podcast is for education and encouragement. It is not therapy, and it's not a substitute for individualized care. If you're worried about your child or yourself, please reach out to a trusted professional in your area. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are building something new, one tiny win at a time. I'll see you in the next episode, probably with a cold coffee in hand, cheering you on.